Good day everyone! In this video, different definitions and explanations of globalization from scholars will be discussed. Its concept, its metaphors such as solid and liquid, to appreciate the earlier epoch before globalization and the present globalized world. I will also generally discuss the different globalization theories. We experience many changes in the last century, especially in social relationship and social construct. Change is inevitable, thus we have to deal and cope with it. Bauman, 2003, a scholar, stated that globalization is a very important change, or the most important change. The reality of globalization made us realize that we are part of the global age. That means there is a prevailing sense of interconnectedness of all individuals with the use of the internet and the mass media. Globalization encompasses a multitude of processes that involve the economy, political systems, and culture. Social structures, or how individuals in the society interact and live together, are directly affected by the globalization. Throughout, globalization obtained ideas that it pertains to progress, development, and integration. Swedish journalist Thomas Larsson viewed globalization as a positive phenomenon. Globalization as the process of world shrinkage, of distances getting shorter, things moving closer. It pertains to the increasing ease with which somebody on one side of the world can interact to mutually benefit with somebody on the other side of the world. Conversely, in the mid-1990s, Martin Core regarded globalization with regression, colonialism, and destabilization. Alright, so those are the different definitions of globalization. All concepts are complex and multifaceted as the definition deal with economic, political, and social dimensions. There is a recent definition of globalization from George Ritzer. He stated that globalization is a transplanetary process or set of processes involving increasing liquidity and the growing multi-directional flows of people, objects, places, and information, as well as the structures they encounter and create that are barriers to or expedite those flows. This definition assumes that globalization could bring either integration or fragmentation, or both. Goods, products, and services or information flow easily in the global world. However, there are also barriers or structural blocks that could slow down the activity of one country or could limit the places a person can visit. Another questions, how can we appreciate the definitions? How can these understand globalization? First, defining globalization is shaped by the perspective of that person. For this reason, globalization implied many things to many people. Globalization is a world of things that have different speeds, access, points of origin and termination, and varied relationships to institutional structures in different regions, nations, or societies. Second, sociologist Cesar Poppy believe that globalization is the debate and the debate is globalization. One became part and parcel of the other. As Poppy, the literature stemming from the debate on globalization has grown in the last decade beyond any individual's capability of extracting a workable definition of the concept. In a sense, the meaning of the concept is self-evident. In another, it is vague and obscure as its reaches are wide and constantly shifting. Perhaps more than any other concept, globalization is the debate about it. The third one is that globalization is real. It has been changing as society develops. Globalization occurred in the past, still occurring in the present, and definitely will occur in the future. However, the future of globalization will be hard to predict. We could just expect the fluidity and complexity of globalization as a concept made more debates, discussions, and definitions more than an agreements on it. In general, globalization is a concept that is not easy to define because it shifts in nature. It is complex, it is multifaceted, and can be influenced by the person who defined it. George Ritzer in the article The Globalization of Nothing stated that for this reason, the task of defining globalization should revive more discussions. Interestingly, we engage in the study of globalization. Now, let us use metaphors to help us better understand another term. Let's use the state of matter, the liquid, and the solid. Solidity also refers to barriers that prevent or make difficult the movement of things. Furthermore, solids can either be natural or man-made. Landforms and bodies of water are examples of natural solids. Man-made barriers includes the Great Wall of China and the Berlin Wall. The modern man-made solid is the nine-dash line being used by the People's Republic of China in their claim to the West Philippine Sea. This created limited access to the Filipino fishermen to the West Philippine Sea. Liquidity refers to the increasing ease of movement of people, things, information, and places in the contemporary world. For example, in the global finance, changes in the stock market are a matter of seconds. Characteristics of liquid phenomena is that their movement is difficult to stop. Another example is the video being uploaded on YouTube or Facebook. So these are hard to put an end once they become viral. So that's liquidity. Solidity and liquidity have constant interaction. Currently, liquidity is the one increasing and proliferating. For the reason, the metaphor which could best describe globalization is liquidity. Liquids do flow, and this idea of flow. Flows are the movement of people, things, places, and information brought by the growing porosity of global limitations. I want you to think of different foreign cuisines being patronized and consumed by the Filipinos. Aside from our local dishes, the majority of us are fond of eating foods that were introduced by the foreign culture. Clearly, foods are being globalized. We have established definitions and issues defining globalization, as well as metaphors to understand its concept. Now, I will talk a partial view of the important theories of globalization, homogeneity and heterogeneity. Homogeneity refers to the increasing sameness in the world as cultural inputs, economic factors, and political orientations of societies expand to create more practices, same economies, and similar forms of government. Homogeneity is often linked to cultural imperialism, meaning a culture influences other culture. So for example, in our country, the dominant religion is Christianity, and this was brought to us by the Spaniards. Heterogeneity pertains to the creation of various cultural practices, new economies, and political groups because of the interaction of elements from different societies in the world. Contrary to the cultural imperialism, heterogeneity is associated with cultural hybridization. A more specific concept is glocalization. Glocalization is a combination of words globalization and localization. The term is used to describe a product or service that is developed and distributed globally, but is also adjusted to accommodate the user or consumer in a local market. In the marketing context, glocalization means the creation of products or services for the global market by adapting them to local cultures. For example, in France, Ronald McDonald mascot is replaced by Asterix, or a popular French cartoon character in a McDonald's commercial. This same goes with political institutions. Benjamin Barber, a political scientist, published a book, Jihad versus Macworld: How Globalism and Tribalism Are Reshaping the World, in which he puts forth a theory that describes the struggle between Macworld, or the globalization and the corporate control of the political processes, and Jihad, an Arabic term for struggle. Where did it start? So let's look at the 5 different perspectives regarding the origins of globalizations. According to Nayan Chanda, it is our basic human need to make our lives better that made globalization possible. For this reason, nobody can trace the meaning of globalization. Chanda mentioned commerce, religion, politics, and warfare are the urges of people toward a better life. All are connected to 4 aspects of globalization, and they can be traced all throughout the history: trade, missionary work, adventures, and conquest. Ritzer cited 6 great epochs of globalization. So these are also called waves. Each has its own origin, and these are the sequential occurrence of the epoch. Globalization of religion, European colonial conquest, intra-European wars, heyday of European imperialism, post-World War II period, post-Cold War period. The recent years could also be regarded as the beginnings of globalization, with reference to specific technological advances in communication and transportation. Some examples include the first transatlantic telephone cable, the first transatlantic television broadcast, the founding of modern internet in 1988, and the terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers in New York. Certainly with this view, more and more specific events will characterize not just the origins of globalizations, but more of its history. The emergence of the United States as the global power, the emergence of multinational corporations, the demise of the Soviet Union, and the end of the Cold War. Yes, that's it. We differentiate competing conceptions of globalization and identify the underlying philosophies of the varying definitions of globalizations.